Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Take 5. And today I'm changing my hat from investigator to mediator. As those of you who've been listening to these videos know that most of my talks have been about issues around investigations. And today I want to talk about something kind of completely different. I mean, the underlying thing is the same, conflict and managing conflict. But sometimes when we manage conflict, we're not necessarily investigating. Maybe sometimes we're mediating or assessing or finding other ways to get at the root cause of issues. And one of those root causes is ongoing conflict. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about prevention. So I get hired by a lot of organizations to give talks on, communications, conflict resolution, how to have difficult conversations, how to manage conflict. And I think it would be fair to say that most of us go through our lives trying to avoid conflict at all costs. We don't want conflict. We don't want to deal with conflict. It just isn't something we want in our lives. But the reality is not only are we one day and often many times going to have to deal with conflict, conflict is actually a good thing. Conflict is how we grow. It's how we change. It's how we come up with new ideas. If everybody always agreed on everything, well, of course, there would be no progress. We have to have conflict. And there's a saying that I use it a lot. I talk about it's not the what, it's the how. And this comes up a lot in some of the investigations that we do, where we talk about the idea that, yes, this person needed to do X, Y, and Z. The problem is how they went about it, how they communicated, the things that they did to communicate an important message. It's the methodology, the manner in which they communicated that created the problem. And so I spend a lot of time talking to people about what are the things you can do to try and manage that communication. What are the things you can do to try and find a way to help the other person hear you? And there are lots of great things. I mean, one of the first things you can do is that when you do have an issue with somebody, you need to go at that issue from the perspective of non-blaming. So let's say I'm working with somebody and, I have a bit of an issue with them. I have problems with how they are doing their job. It's affecting me. A lot of us would go to that person and say, hey, you know what, Joe? I got an issue with you. I got an issue with how you're doing that. Or, you know what, could you please stop doing that? That's really creating a problem. Now, what do you think Joe's going to think, right? Joe's going to say, well, you're attacking me, right? In his mind, he's going to feel like he needs to defend himself. So right away, Joe's back goes up. Now we're not in a good position to have a conversation because from Joe's perspective, he needs to defend himself. And from your perspective, you're just trying to deal with a problem. The best way to handle it is to approach Joe from a non-blaming perspective to say, Joe, I've been thinking about how we work together. And I think there's a lot we could do differently that might make both our lives a little bit easier. You want to have a coffee? Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the things we can do differently. I think it might benefit us both. So that now has created a scenario where Joe's not feeling like he has to defend himself. I haven't created or stated the situation to be a problem with Joe. I've instead said, hey, I think we could do better. I think we could together work better together. Let's find a way to solve, some problems. Let's find a way to work more cooperatively or whatever it happens to be. There's benefit to Joe. Joe now sees a reason. He now has a motivation to engage in this conversation, and he'll be able to do so now without feeling threatened, without feeling like he has to defend himself. So that's one really critical step. Now, the other thing is, if you're on the receiving end of somebody coming to you with an issue, I always say respond intelligently. Don't react from the gut. When because most people are not going to approach you in a non-blaming way, right? Most people are going to come to you quite agitated, maybe pointing the finger, accusing you of something. And if your immediate reaction is to defend yourself, you're not going to achieve anything. Instead, create a dialogue. Recognize that not everybody has the skills to share their concerns in the way I just described. Right? Some people will still come to you, and many people, probably most people, will come to you if they have an issue with you and raise it directly with you as you're the issue that needs to be fixed. Rather than getting angry, rather than getting defensive, have a dialogue with that person. Talk to them. Say, all right, you know what? I can tell that we need to work through some issues here. Let's sit down and have a conversation. And then use that opportunity to ask questions, to learn. That's the other thing in conflict resolution that a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of time spent trying to defend ourselves. We take this sort of rights-based position where, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to defend myself. And, someone somehow is going to decide that I'm the right person. I'm the correct person. I've got it right. Well, oftentimes you both have it right. Oftentimes it's about perspective. And by talking to each other, you can learn that the conflict isn't necessarily with the person, it's with a problem. And you can then focus on the problem and resolve the issues together. So that's my take on, having some of these difficult conversations and how we can resolve them. I hope you find it helpful. There's obviously a lot more I could talk about on this topic, and I do when I'm teaching my courses on, harassment prevention and communication and that kind of thing. So, maybe some of you will be in one of those courses one day, but in my little 5 minutes I have here, I can't get into all the details. So I hope you do find this helpful. And I want to thank you very much for listening to Take 5. Bye-bye.